Here's this is an important one, and one that I hear a lot. And this is a claim regarding Rome that has existed since the Reformation. I often hear from Catholics the argument that the Roman Church is the church of miracles and prophecies. How would you counter something like Fatima or other Catholic miraculous events? And this was an argument at the time of the Reformation as well. And Rome claimed consistently, very consistently claimed that they had the miracles, and the Reformation churches did not have the miracles. And because of that, this was kind of a stamp of divine validity. God was putting a stamp of approval on the Roman church as the true church, because they're the ones that had these miraculous happenings, which couldn't have happened if the Rome was not the true church. And that argument continues today. You can look at things like Eucharistic miracles. You can talk about the miraculous events that occur with the saints, things like, the stigmata with Padre Pio, or bilocation, or all of these weird kinds of stories. I think you have to address this. There are a couple things that I would say. One is, first of all, it's not true that it is only the Roman Church that has prophecies and miracles. And this is something that the Lutheran reformers pointed out as well. You do have people like Huss having this prophecy of Luther. And there are others as well, other things that are pointed out that are prophecies about Luther in the past. So I'm not going to get into the historical validity of those claims or not, but the point is that it has been claimed that there are those kinds of things within the Lutheran tradition as well. If you look at the Scottish Presbyterians, the Scottish Covenanters, in the beginning of the Scottish Reformation, there are all sorts of miracles that are occurring that were well documented. And they're not Lutheran, of course, but you find miraculous things occurring in any Christian tradition, and you find, those things even occurring in non-Christian traditions too. So I think that the problem you have with saying that the miracles or claims for miracles in and of themselves can be proofs of the validity of a tradition, you do have those kinds of things occurring even beyond Christianity. You can speak to someone who's part of the Baha'i faith or a Sikh who has had some kind of miraculous vision of, seeing, ascended masters or whatever. That's probably more of a New Age term. But, and you find this with New Age people as well. They had this miraculous vision of this or that. And you find this with cults. You find this with all sorts of people. So I just don't think a miracle in and of itself, or a claim of the miraculous, is enough to validate a tradition as being true. You find this with Mormonism, for example. There are individuals who claim that when they prayed, reading the Book of Mormon for their testimony, they receive a vision of angels. Or there are people who say that when they have practiced baptism for the dead, they've actually seen these souls, being freed while they're practicing that. You could find Hindus or Buddhists that have various claims of the miraculous. So I think claims of the miraculous, simply in and of themselves, aren't really proof of what is true. I mean, you do find, even in Scripture itself, that there are false miracles. I mean, you find this with the story of Moses, right? And the magicians that Pharaoh has, that they do have these miraculous things that they're doing. Now, those miracles ultimately pale in comparison to the miracles God performs through Moses. And he does these miracles to demonstrate that he is the true God, in opposition to these magicians who are working for Pharaoh. But the Scripture does not deny that those kinds of things happen. Now, I will say this: when you're talking about something like Fatima, or even you're talking about Eucharistic miracles, these things are more verifiable than something like a vision that somebody has, because you can always point to a subjective experience that somebody has with a vision, say with Mormonism, with all sorts of other things as well. Fatima in particular is very much well attested. I mean, there were many individuals that have testimonies of what happened. The testimonies are very different. They all saw something happening with the sun when it was prophesied that it would. Some people saw it bouncing around. Some people said they didn't see anything. There are all sorts of testimonies, so it's not exactly clear that there is one clear-cut objective thing that everyone saw. But it does appear that something happened. And I don't think we have to deny that something happened. But ultimately, what we have to do when we see a miracle or supposed miracle or that is validating a message, what you have to do is go back to that message and say, does it accord with Scripture? If you look at the way that St. Paul dealt with this, for example, when he said, if I or even an angel proclaims any other gospel, let it be anathema. So whether or not the message is consistent with the biblical gospel is the most important standard in looking at those kinds of events. So Fatima, I think I would say this, that Fatima is the most well verified of those kinds of miracles. I'm not convinced that nothing happened at Fatima or that it was just mass hallucination. I'm not convinced that mass hallucinations are a thing that really happens, at least to that degree. I think you have kind of a hard time demonstrating that that's the case. But to say that there was a supernatural something does not necessarily mean that it was from God. And again, we know this from the Old Testament itself. We know that there are supernatural forces in the world, and you don't have to have a naturalistic explanation of something to say that this was a work of God and it was demonstrating the truth of the Roman Catholic Church. So look at the message of Fatima, and it is, we could go through that at some point and what the message is and the problem with the message of Fatima. But if you look at that message that was revealed to these children, it is very much not in accord with the biblical gospel. Okay, so there's my there's my answer. We could go at another point through specific things specific things that are claimed as miracles, but that's my general idea.